This episode of the LCTV News is brought to you by North Shore Community College. If you have the will to attend college, we have the way for you to earn your degree.
Good morning, this is LCTV News, and I'm Dani Vittori. This was a jam-packed week, full of celebrations and city developments. On the Lowdown, we welcome 2 members of the Lynn Cultural Council to discuss their mission and grant opportunities. Here's the news for Friday, March 31st, 2023. Former Lynn Director of Elder Services, Chris Gomez, left to become the Director of Elder Services in Beverly on March 10th, with Program Manager Tanya Friedman taking over for the interim. Friedman gives credit to Gomez for allowing her to create a variety of programs for the seniors, including bringing NBC News reporters to the center. Both her and Gomez also created an English as a second language program. Friedman is looking forward to continuing that program, as well as the digital literacy learning class, and celebrating the center's first anniversary with a week of activities. Under her leadership as program director, the Senior Center also hosted several diversity-focused events, including Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations and a Black History Month fashion show. Beyond Walls had a presentation tour for students from Arlington High School last week on the 21st. Several students commented on how much they enjoyed the art and learned from the tour. Here is more from the event.
The tour was great. It was an amazing experience by Beyond Walls, and everybody was super nice, so it was a good time.
Yeah, the tour guides were great, and a lot of the pieces were really spectacular.
I thought that the tour was very nice, and I really liked seeing all of the artists' work, and I thought that it was a very interesting tour to just walk and just see a different part of Lynn that I haven't seen before.
I think that it's really cool. I think it's nice that they're trying to liven it up and put beautiful things in a place that wasn't as beautiful before.
It was nice to be outside in nice weather. Good to see the murals and how it connected to the culture.
Yeah, the art was just beautiful. I loved how it was outside and it was just a nice little walk. It was very convenient and nice.
Those murals were a lot more interesting to look at than I'd imagined, because just walking around the streets, it just feels like an everyday thing, but it really felt like being in an art museum. It was actually quite interesting.
I just thought it was a really unique experience, and just really cool to see just ordinary people's work in city that can impact so many lives just every day.
Also because I think because we came with a school and we were outside, it forced you to take everything in, and just that alone makes everything a lot more special and just eye-opening.
It was great to see also all the local businesses we walked by, and a lot of the places. It was just great to experience the environment around here.
I thought it was really cool that we got to learn about the background of the artists, because I feel you would just look at the murals and not know the background infos. I think it was really cool learning about where they were from and the deeper meaning behind a lot of them.
Would you do the tour again if you were given the choice?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I really liked it. I would definitely come back.
Yeah, definitely, I would say so. There's not just art, but just things in public that you would see, and it's just easy to connect to. Yeah.
Yeah, I would too, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought this was a really cool and fun experience.
Also just doing it with friends also makes it a lot more fun too, so I feel we'd both definitely come back.
yeah, it's actually something I feel like my grandpa would really like. He loves stuff like this, and I just thought of him while I was in this tour, so yes.
EDIC of Lynn purchased the medical building on 225 Boston Street, paying $3.36 million for the 30,000 square foot building formerly owned by Chatham Light Realty Corporation. This gives new hope to the efforts of the city to keep the VA clinic in Lynn. According to EDIC Executive Director Jim Cowdell, quote, "It is our hope that there is now a much better chance of the VA staying now that we own the building. This provides us with the opportunity to not only keep the VA clinic, but also expand veterans' health care services at this site," end quote. Also, according to Mayor Gerald Nicholson, this shows the city's commitment to keeping the clinic in Lynn, as so many veterans rely on it for services. There are currently 2,000 patients enrolled, and buying this building adds security for both present and future patients. There was a Greek flag raising at City Hall on the 23rd in celebration of Greek Independence Day. Those in attendance heard about the importance of celebrating Greek culture in Lynn. Take a look.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City Hall. Happy Greek Independence Day.
Thank you.
On Thursday, March 23rd, City Hall celebrated Greek Independence Day by raising the flag of Greece, acknowledging the Greek Revolution of 1821, and celebrating Greek culture. Pictures were taken, and the Greek national anthem was sung as the flag was raised high above City Hall. Mayor Nicholson also spoke on the importance of recognizing this day.
We are so proud to be able to have moments like this where we recognize the heritage we have in our community, and the Greek heritage is an important part of that. So much that the Greek people have contributed to this world, and it's so special that we have folks in Lynn that are keeping those traditions alive.
Those present at the ceremony included the mayor and his staff, Reverend Father Alex Orfanos of St. George Greek Orthodox Church, Fire Chief Dan Sullivan, City Councilors Coco Alisung and Richard Colucci, and Councilor at Large Brian Field, among others. What has become an annual tradition in Lynn means even more to the Greek community that lives within it. For LCTV News, I'm Josh Englander.
An arrest has been made in connection with a shooting that occurred back on February 7th at a Wendy's on Boston Street. A 16-year-old drive-thru worker was shot and wounded, and an arrest warrant was put out for a 17-year-old suspect whose name has not yet been released. He was taken into custody last Wednesday, the 29th, after a vehicle pursuit in Marlborough. He is now facing charges of armed assault with intent to murder and intimidation of a witness. The Kakrona Center, Incorporated, held a fundraiser for the Cambodian New Year celebration they will be holding next month, April 29th. There was a Cambodian band, food, and celebration. Here's a clip from the event.
Hello, my name is Kirirat Singh. I am a member of the Karana Board of Directors. Karana been here forever, but I just recently officially on the board a few months ago. But I involved with Karana since they're starting. So tonight we are doing a fundraising to support our New Year, which we are doing on a yearly basis at the end of April. At this fundraising we have the Cambodian band, live band. We have Cambodian food, a taste of Khmer food, and a mix of crowds. So it is a fundraising. It's called Krama. Krama is a scarf, what I have on here. It's called Krama fundraising. It's one of the Khmer identity clothes. Or scarf.
Why do you think it's important, like cultural?
Yeah. Well, because Karana need to have this kind of event so that we could have the fun to do our New Year at the end of April. And we do this each and every year. Of course, during COVID, everybody shut down, so we didn't have the opportunity to do that until this year, 2023. This year, our New Year will happen on Saturday, April 29, down in the Common Park for the city of Lynn. So welcome, and on that day, please join us. It's from 10 to 5. You could stop by anytime.
On March 23rd, the MBTA launched an online speed restriction database, which will allow riders access to the location, speed limits, and restrictions across the MBTA. The database is updated daily and allows people to see where restrictions are located on maps they're already familiar with seeing. Those who use the dashboard can see data spanning back to January of 2023, as well as a summary of the changes over time. Beginning last month, stationary dashboards were released containing information from the previous month. The goal is to be transparent and show those who use the MBTA the progress being made in reducing speed and making the experience safer for users. The speed restriction database was created in response to the Federal Transit Administration's Safety Management Inspection. Brickett Elementary hosted Talking Hands Theater for a puppet time performance. The purpose was to encourage kids to read more by acting out a book using puppets. Take a look.
So we are so incredibly fortunate with the sponsorship of our PTO to have had the Talking Hands Theater do a performance for our students. This is a culmination of month-long events that we held for Reading Month this March.
She cartwheeled in puddles and clambered up trees. She danced with some dogs that were covered with fleas.
I'm a puppeteer. I'm from Western Mass, and I've been a puppeteer all my life, and the show that I'm doing is about reading, encouraging kids to get excited about reading. And the show is called Bookworm and the Barefoot Books.
To make this show is I found 4 books that I really liked, and I turned them into a puppet show. And you can do the same thing too. You find a book that you like, you can transform it into a show.
But they really do hear what the puppets are saying in a way that they don't hear when a person's saying them. So you can encourage kids to get excited about things like reading and science and all kinds of academic subjects. But I also love doing the voices and making the puppets and everything that goes into creating the presentation.
Not for the Lynn Cultural Council, this would not be something that we would be able to do, as they were the ones that funded this event for us. So we are so appreciative not only to the Lynn Cultural Council, but certainly to our PTO. And the Talking Hands Theater program was absolutely amazing.
The Mass Hire North Shore Workforce Board, in collaboration with Lynn Public Schools and the Mayor's Office, is working to bring more high-paying jobs to Lynn. The project began last year, and the program director, Dana Smith, presented an update to the City Council on Tuesday the 28th. The goal is to help create paths to high-demand jobs, such as healthcare, construction, manufacturing, and clean energy. An example of this is an offshore wind terminal project being run by Salem. The target audience for this is those aged 14 to 26, as well as immigrant or low-wage workers. The city, as well as many other organizations who are a part of the development plan, are looking for ways to help Lynners maneuver obstacles, such as transportation and childcare, as well as the time and cost required to be trained for a new job. The plan team is excited to see this progress moving forward. There was a meeting held to discuss improvements being made to Barry Park this past week. Community members could come out and hear Aaron Clausen discuss possible improvements that could be made. Here is more.
All right, folks, we'll get started. We have a small but cozy group.
On Wednesday, March 29th, Lynn officials and residents gathered at Old Time Italian Cuisine over on Boston Street to discuss possible improvements to Barry Park's parking lot. Hosted by Aaron Clausen, principal planner in the city of Lynn, the meeting highlighted some steps being taken to improve upon Barry Park using green infrastructure.
The primary scope of this work is to take the parking area over at Barry Park, just right down the walkway here, generally a muddy dirt pit where people park now, and implementing or deploying a number of these different techniques.
Some of these solutions included pervious paving of the parking lot, a rain garden, an underground flood storage for flooding problems, and building a bioswale, which collects polluted stormwater, soaks it into the ground, and filters out the pollution.
This is the parking lot here. Batch Elder Street comes in, and then along the edges, there's what's called rain gardens, and they're essentially divots in the ground where water can be directed and stored. And then up Batch Elder Street at the corner, at the intersection, a couple of bioswales, bumping them out at the corner and providing the ability to capture water like the ones in Boston Street.
After the presentation, attendees were encouraged to ask questions they had regarding the project, including how it would affect their own lives. Based on past success in other neighborhoods, it seems Lynn officials are optimistic about the future that lies ahead for Barry Park.
By no stretch of the imagination will this solve all the flooding issues, but this is, again, one of those sort of discrete, disaggregate interventions that can help hold and store water.
For LCTV News, I'm Josh Englander.
Rocco Brienzo has become the oldest firefighter in Lynn, celebrating his 104th birthday last week. He received a hat with the number 104 on the front, as well as a ride in the fireboat, the Rocky B, named after him. Brienzo first tried to join the department in 1948, but did not meet the minimum height requirement of 5'6". In '49, the requirement was lowered, so he was able to join and be sworn in as a firefighter. He and his late wife were married for 75 years and have 3 children, as well as 9 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Tenants of 127 Washington Street, as well as members of Lynn United for Change, gathered to protest the drastic increases in rent being proposed by landlord Daniel Jacobson, who bought the building last year. A statement of support for the tenants was also read during the event and signed by Mayor Nicholson and City Council President Jay Walsh, as well as several other city and state officials. Here is more of what they had to say.
Here in this building, we're writing a different story. These tenants had the courage to stand up and say no. No to these rent increases that are out of control. No to the new landlords who are trying to push them out of their home community.
The housing crisis continues to affect residents throughout the city, including over at 127 Washington Street. On Wednesday, March 29th, members of Lynn United for Change, along with many tenants, gathered to protest the building's owner and landlord, Daniel Jacobson, and his recent decision to increase rent prices substantially. One of these protesters is Mary Sweeney of Lynn United for Change.
We, over the years, have tried to help people who are facing, in the beginning it was foreclosure, okay? But now the real crisis is rent.
Daniel Jacobson, an out-of-town landlord, bought the building last year and began pushing for rent increases across the board, with many cases increasing the rent more than $500 per month. This has resulted in at least half of the tenants of the 15-unit building facing eviction, as they have refused to pay the increased rent.
This is out of line, and that's why I have come out, because I live in Lynn. You know, I was born here. Many of the people who live in this building have come in search of a better life.
According to information provided by Lynn United for Change, residents joined together in a tenant union and tried to negotiate with Jacobson to no success. Tenants then provided a compromise offer that included several gradual rent increases. They received no response, and Mr. Jacobson began filing court eviction cases, leading to the protest on Wednesday. Time will tell how Mr. Jacobson decides to respond. For LCTV News, I'm Josh Englander.
The law, which allowed for municipalities to hold government meetings over Zoom, has been extended to March of 2025. It was first signed into law by former Governor Charlie Baker during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic and extended last July, but was set to expire on March 31st of this year until this new extension was passed. Last week, Beyond Walls hosted a Women's History Month tour and panel. Attendees were taken on a tour, then participated in a panel with 5 female artists to discuss the significance of women in the street art community. Take a look.
Thank you all for being here. This is beautiful. I'm so happy to see you all. And thank you for being here for this artist panel. We have a powerful roster of artists here. Look at this, all this female energy. Let's go. What are some challenges you faced in this career? And if being a woman has been one of the challenges in this career?
Being a woman in a male-dominated field can definitely, I feel like you almost go into it knowing that you're going to experience some form of sexism. But sometimes it's like you still don't understand like how blatant it can be.
I do think there's a certain assumption that we don't have the authority that we do, even though many of us have been doing this for over a decade at this point. People that have been doing it longer tend to be male. So that I think when someone sees a woman that's doing it, they tend to think that we're newer, that we're greener. But I think at this point, like, it doesn't make sense for someone to assume that we're green just because we're female.
I feel like some of the struggles I have faced in my career so far, because I've only been doing this since like 2020, because I was a junior in high school when I started. I remember, I'll never forget, it was March 13th, that was the day the whole world stopped, and I was just in my room and I just drew every single day. I was like, I'm gonna get better at this.
When I did art therapy, when I came back, I knew I wanted to do art, but I wasn't sure how or what I was gonna do. And I heard the term all city. So I'm like, I'm gonna paint in every city that I can. So I bought a van and I sold everything that I owned. And I just traveled around with my dog and I painted everywhere I went.
Given the platform of street art, of creating art, that's larger than life in public spaces, I took it on myself to look deeper in my culture in ways that felt authentic. To me, family is everything. So, kind of just sharing that feeling with the community, with the area, with the canvas I'm working on. It feels empowering. It feels like I'm seen for who I am versus a caricature of my culture.
Thank you all so much, truly. This has been such a pleasure and honor, to be honest, to set this platform for us to all speak so freely.
On deck, the sports update. For the first time this spring, boys volleyball will be offered at Lynn English. Practice began last week with about 26 players on the team. The 2 coaches are Alejandro Lazo, who already worked at Lynn English with the girls volleyball team, and Chris LeBlanc from Classical. This April marks 10 years since the Boston Marathon bombing, which killed 3 people and injured 281 others. The St. Mary's track team will be holding a marathon on April 3rd at 3 p.m. to honor one of the victims, Martin Richard. Richard was an 8-year-old boy killed by the bombings and would have been 18 and a senior in high school this year. The runners are currently raising funds, and the goal is to raise $1,000 for the Martin Richard Foundation. Taking place at Manning Field, 4 runners will go at a time, and as a team, they will combine to run the 26.2 miles. Dick Mag passed away at the age of 83 this past week. He was involved in Lynn Public Schools for 38 years, 20 as a baseball coach at Lynn Classical, as well as teaching at both Classical and Callahan schools and tutoring before retiring. He was inducted into the Classical Hall of Fame in 2019 and was captain of the basketball team back in 1957. Mag also coached at Barry Park in the Lynn Park League as a freshman in college. A Lynn native and longtime resident, Mag made his mark on many he coached and taught. At 58, the Bruins have broken the franchise record for the most wins in a single season and clinched the top seed in the Eastern Conference. David Pasternak has set a record of his own, scoring his 50th and 51st goals in a 4-3 victory over the Carolina Hurricanes, who were down in green and white uniforms, as opposed to the usual red and black colors. Tied 3-3, neither team scored in overtime, resulting in a shootout, which Boston won 1-0. Jeremy Swayman had 34 saves on 37 shots, including 2 in the last 10 seconds of overtime. The Nashville Predators then took down Boston 2-1 before the Bruins bounced back with a 2-1 win against the Columbus Blue Jackets on the 30th. The Boston Celtics had an up-and-down week with 2 high-scoring wins, 120-95 over the Indiana Pacers and 137-93 against the San Antonio Spurs, before losing 130-111 to the Washington Wizards on the road. A win over the Milwaukee Bucks, 140-99 on the 30th, puts Boston just 2 games back of first place in the Eastern Conference. Against the Pacers, Jason Tatum scored 34 points, with Jaylen Brown and Derek White both scoring in the 20s. As a team, they had 28 assists and 48 points in the paint. In a 44-point stomping of the Spurs, Brown was the star, with 41 points, 13 rebounds, and 3 assists. The Celtics were never able to gain momentum against the Wizards, dropping a surprising game to a team below 500 at 34-42. They quickly rebounded with a commanding 41-point victory over the division-leading Bucks. The Boston Red Sox dropped their home opener 10-9 against the Baltimore Orioles yesterday the 30th and began this season in the same place they ended the 2022 season, in last place. On the bright side, there's nowhere to go but up. This week, we welcome the Lynn Cultural Council to discuss their grant process and plans for the future. Here is the lowdown. Good morning and welcome back to another edition of the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and today we have on 2 guests from the Lynn Cultural Council. Could you introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, so my name is Cristian Recinos, and I am the current chair of the Lynn Cultural Council.
My name is Sunil Gulab, and I'm the current admin at the Lynn Cultural Council.
Great. And I say thanks for coming on the show, first and foremost. And I'll ask, sort of broadly, like, what's the goal of the Cultural Council? What do you focus on?
Yeah, so the chief purpose of the Lynn Cultural Council is a grant-making entity, or rather not a grant-making, but a grant-awarding entity. The Lynn Cultural Council is part of Massachusetts Cultural Council's local Cultural Council program. So that just means, there's the Lynn Cultural Council, but every municipality across the state has one. So there's the Swampscott Cultural Council, Beverly Cultural Council, Boston Cultural Council, etc.
And when I look at, you said you're a smaller piece of a larger entity, and you talk about how the local decision-making is a huge piece of the system. So like what you choose to do here could be vastly different than like what the Swampscott one chooses to do, or the Marblehead one or something.
That's very true. So the good thing is the Mass Cultural Council gives us the authority to decide what's important to us. And Lynn is very different, even though we're neighbors with Swampscott and Marblehead. We're so different. We have different goals, different peoples. So that gives us the authority to decide what's important for Lynn. And we could pick, for example, a particular subject. If dance is more important, we could focus on dance for a year. And if, let's say, art or installations is more important the next year, we can change, as long as it's consensus amongst the council. And for that reason, we want a diverse council so that it represents everyone in Lynn when we make those decisions.
Definitely. And when you talk about kind of the process, your fiscal year, does it follow the calendar year, or is it like not exactly? Like when is the start, when is the end?
I'm not 100% about that detail. I want to say the fiscal year ends when we get the award, which is typically February, historically in March, but I don't think it's traditional as in it starts in January, ends in December. But for us, the actual grant cycle, that tends to start in September when the applications open up in an online portal that people can begin applying for. And then us deliberating over them starts as soon as the cycle ends, but typically by mid-October. And then we're typically meeting much more frequently, discussing them, evaluating them up until like January.
And typically when a grant's awarded to someone, they have a year to use the funding to put on their event. So this year, it went out, I want to say it was January 22nd, or was it February 22nd?
Yeah, approximately.
So let's say it was February 22nd of 2022. The awardee has until February 22nd, 2023 to show that the event has happened.
That makes sense. And in terms of money, I know it's distributed differently depending on what people are applying for, but how much money actually is available typically for you in a grant cycle?
So the Mass Cultural Council is the one that gives us our funds to award. So it's all state money, and it's increased incrementally each year. So this year we had $99,800 to award, but actually that number's a little bit larger because we also have to add into that annual allotment any funds that didn't get utilized in the previous year. So this year what we had to, combining the state allotment as well as those funds that didn't get claimed in the previous year, was a little over 100,000. 2022, the state allotment was like 80,000 something, and then in 2021 it was 79 something. So incrementally it's increased each year. The average award that we'll typically give people is around 5,000, but not to discourage anybody who might want to apply for more funds. Last year, I think our largest grant that we awarded was about 10,000 to Michelle La Poetica's density events. But yeah, so there's variety and there are options there. And also, speaking to how much we get from the state each year.
And if someone, an organization, whoever wants to apply for a grant, how would they go about doing so? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, so when the grant portal opens in September, it's an online questionnaire. Unfortunately, I think previously, Sunil's been on the board longer than me, so historically, did they ever take paper grants? Because as far as I know currently, it's all online.
During my time as well, it was all online. They could have been prior.
All right, so
I only know of online.
As far as our tenure, it's all an online application. And folks just need to, it's fairly A to Z, general, demographic questions, name, organization, contact info. And then obviously we need a description of whatever the project might be. We need a budget. We do try to do, another part of the Cultural Council is that we do community outreach. So, via social media posts, we also try to get some workshops together for people who might be questioning, like, how do I apply? And that's an opportunity for people to see somebody in person to kind of walk them through it a little bit.
And also I handhold, if anyone needs and they send out an email to lynnculturalcouncil@gmail.com, I will assist them getting an application done.
But the online application, I think it's fairly,
self-explanatory.
Yeah. Something I do note to people, though, is that sometimes folks aren't the strongest writers in describing their things. There's also the opportunity to add an attachment to your application. So sometimes if people want to do a video, like, verbally explaining the process, or if they want to attach any other media that, might better evidence their project to us. I think recently you guys just covered the North Shore Media Expo. They didn't receive funding from us this year, but they did receive it last year. And something that Newbie had done is that he attached a lot of videos and images of like what the project was, which made it easier for the council to, know what it is.
The visual can really help sometimes. You can see the event, you can see the impact of it, in addition to, as you said, the written description. And I know we have a few images up there. Are those from previous meetings or events, or looks like?
Yes, they are. So the bottom left is our meeting at Gala. This was during COVID, so we all had our masks on. I think this was the onboarding of the new Cultural Council members, which we have a very young, vibrant, new group of people who are much more active than I remember from previous groups. Not that the previous groups were bad, but there's this invigorating sense of passion for the arts, which is always great to see. And Cristian, our chair, has been great, learning the ropes from people like me who were actually new into the Cultural Council. So in a lot of ways, we've been creating our, goals and direction. Oh, other pictures are gone. But there was one from High Rock Park. That was, I think, part of Michelle La Poetica's. That was like an open mic. And the one on the bottom right is Anna from Anna Did a Thing, and she helped with painting jersey barriers in Lynn for restaurants during COVID.
Yes, I remember that. They all got painted. That was really cool looking.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you, one thing is, why do you think it is so important to have a cultural council that awards grants and has that representation in Lynn?
I think it's a good avenue for artists and creatives to bring color to Lynn. As an artist myself, people typically look at the dollar sign, can I afford to do something? And artists in general are always looking for funds. We're always, it's the person who has to, moonlight doing some job to be able to paint or draw during the day, that kind of thing. And this is the best opportunity or an easy opportunity to bring a thought, an idea that you have in your mind, bring it to life with public funding. And the application process is not very difficult. And I think, the reward for that is quite great because not only do you get to, put your mark on your city, but it is possible through public funding. And opportunities like this are very precious to the few who don't have very many avenues to go to for that funding.
Yeah, and I think I would just echo a lot of the things Sunil just mentioned. It's great for the local vitality of the arts and culture scene. And I think we discussed a little bit before cameras were rolling that, it's very accessible. There aren't restrictions that you need to be a 501c3 nonprofit. You can apply as an individual, as an informal group. And, we also supplement, I think, some funds that, should really come from the municipality. Again, these are all state funds for this program. But a lot of local cultural council funds, at least in the case of Lynn, will go to the public library's summer arts events. It'll go towards some field trips for students at the local public schools. So it also supplements some of the things that municipal funds aren't going to at the moment.
And municipal funds may be used for larger projects, larger groups. The Cultural Council funds are perfect for smaller, as well as larger, but also smaller.
Yeah, it's perfect for both.
Yeah.
You said people who have, I don't want to say small artists, but it's just smaller groups.
Yeah.
Different events.
Yeah, definitely different events that require different levels of funding.
Right.
And I probably should have asked this before, but how long have you both been involved with the Cultural Council?
I'm going on for, I think it's 5 years now, 4 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sunil currently serves as their admin, but previously he was a voting member of the body. This will be year 2, I think. A lot of our members on the Cultural Council coming out of the pandemic are newly appointed. So a majority of our council, I think, are, newer to the body. So only a few years so far for me.
That's great, though. You said new voices.
Yes.
Opinions, those are always good. And is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the council that I maybe missed or didn't talk about?
I don't think I said it, but I also want to make sure that folks know that even though the title is the Cultural Council, I think people immediately see the title and think this is explicitly for the arts, painting, dancing, traditional forms of art that people would think of. But The state gives us the guidelines that culture is defined not just as the arts, but also the sciences, also the humanities. So if there are projects out there that people are looking to get funding for, such as, I'm not quite sure what to think of scientifically, but like, astronomy or, biology, something like that, they can also seek funding for that. If a public high school teacher wants to take kids to like the science museum or something, they could apply for that. I know that some of the local high schools will do really fun stuff like create hovercrafts or things like that. If they want money for materials for something like that, they could do that. And then humanities also, if there's something that, doesn't explicitly fall within the arts, but it is like something maybe more in the DEIA field, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, that's also an avenue that, we can take a look at it, evaluate it, and see if we could potentially also give funding to those types of projects.
Yeah.
And also we give preference to first-time appliers. So if you think you have a project and you're a little afraid of applying, please reach out because we will give you an advantage. We do want those who otherwise are not represented in Lynn to show up and have their projects funded.
It sounds like a really impressive, inclusive organization, and I want to thank you for coming on to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. And once again, this has been the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and we'll see you next week with more guests. Now, the community calendar. Next Friday, the 7th, there will be an opening reception for Green, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Presented by Gala, the exhibit is focused on green as a color and how it represents the environment, plants, water, or anything else. There will also be a table with food and drinks. Also on the 7th, there will be an art battle at Lynn Arts, 25 Exchange Street. Doors open at 7 p.m., with the show beginning at 8 p.m. There's a $15 cover charge, with 12 artists participating in 3 rounds of competition with 1 champion. Painters will be given 20 minutes to create the best piece they can as attendees walk around to observe the process and vote on which ones they believe are the best. All completed works will be auctioned off. As part of a series of events, the Lynn Museum is continuing Second Saturdays. This includes free admission to the museum, a take-home art kit for families, and special activities. Located at 590 Washington Street, come by for an afternoon of fun. To learn more about these events and all events in our community calendar, visit lyntv.org. That is all the news for this week. Go to Lynn Community Television on YouTube to watch our videos and interviews. Also, follow us at Lynn Community Television for updates on what is happening around the city. And go to lyntv.org for news, press releases, and videos on demand. I'm Dani Vittori. This is LCTV News, and we will see you next week.